Come to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Blankley.
Present.
Mr. Blankley is present. Mr. Florio is excused. Mr. Hebert.
Here.
Mr. Hebert is present. Ms. Hugh Smith.
Here.
Ms. Hugh Smith is present. Mr. Johns.
Here.
Mr. Johns is present. Mr. Mafucci. Mr. Mafucci is present. Chairman McCabe is excused.
Is there anyone signed up for the public forum?
There is not.
Is there anyone present who would like to speak to the committee at this time? None. The next business item is approval of minutes. You have the June 29th, 2022 minutes of the Environment and Public Works Committee before you. They will stand approved unless the clerk is notified of any changes by the end of the day. The next item on the agenda is new business. Mr. Clerk.
Referral 22-0224, acceptance of a grant from the Oswego County Soil and Water Conservation District for the water quality program and authorize a contract with the Monroe County Soil and Water Conservation District.
Moved by legislator Johns, seconded by legislator Mafucci. Is there any discussion? None? Oh, legislator Johns.
Through the chair to the administration, in this particular referral, where's the difference of the 19,600 going to?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, the total grant amount is, your reference is 89,200. There is a portion of that, 69,600, is going to the Soil and Water Conservation District. 19,600, the balance, is going to the United States Geological Survey through their cooperative agreement with the county. So okay.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Seeing none, carries. Next item, Mr. Clerk.
Referral 22-0225, acceptance of a municipal waste reduction and recycling grant in aid from the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation for a municipal waste reduction and/or recycling project.
Moved by legislator Johns, seconded by legislator Mafucci. Is there any discussion? Legislator Johns?
Yes. Through the chair to the administration, what was the grant amount accepted in Resolution 181 of 21?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, that amount was $87,348.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Item carries. Next item, please, Mr. Clerk.
Referral 22-0226, amend the 2022 to 2027 capital improvement program and the 2022 capital budget to add a project entitled Multimodal Freight Initiative Planning Project and authorize financing for the project.
Moved by legislator Johns, seconded by legislator Mafucci. Is there any discussion?
And we've requested some information about these regional study that DS.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, those reference reports will be provided before full legislature.
My other question is, could you clarify what the $1 million request is for? The project itself, is it for the study? The referral indicated that it's.
Yep. Through you, Mr. Chairman, the $1 million would be for an economic assessment as well as a marketing assessment of a multimodal freight initiative. It really will give the opportunity for the county to determine the feasibility, really financial feasibility of a project of this scale and magnitude.
Mr. Garland, subsequently to that, the referral indicated there would be a
Through you, Mr. Chairman, that is correct, and we would come back to your honorable body for additional authorization for those assessments, namely infrastructure, environmental, some preliminary engineering, grant applications, things of that nature. We will also come back for approvals to hire a consultant as part of the economic and marketing assessment. So we'll be back before the legislature for that. We expect that will be in the fourth quarter of this year.
Garland, and through you. I'm curious, in terms of already have an entity in mind that would be performing those assessments, and I guess start.
Again, we would go through a public competitive process. We would expect that we will have a national level consultant either on the lead or on the team. But certainly a project of this scale is going to require a certain level of national expertise.
Garland, and through you, Mr. Chair. Would you envision that this team would also include some kind of analysis of the economic implications to other types of economic development that we're pursuing, and how this may negatively impact that? So, for example, if we're trying to be a tourist destination, doesn't make a lot of sense to be a destination looking at what Long Beach, California, or Elizabeth, New Jersey, or other points like tourist and, port of entry aren't compatible. So what does this look like in terms of an analysis?
Well, through you, Mr. Chairman, the primary driver of an initiative like this is to create jobs and spur economic growth for the region. And given Monroe County's location to global markets, we are at a very unique location. There's a tremendous demand for what they call inland ports to offset a lot of the demand that are on marine ports, particularly in the East Coast. And the federal government has made tremendous infrastructure dollars available for projects like this. There's the Infra Grant Program through the USDOT that has made $7.25 billion available during a 4-year period, fiscal year 22 to 2026. And there's also the MEGA program, another national infrastructure project assistance program that's making $5 billion available through that same period of time. So we want to be ahead of that. We want to get studies in place. The grant funding typically, this grant funding funds projects that have quantifiable and measurable benefits. They typically do not fund studies. So that's why we want to initiate the study now to determine the viability. Once we get through the marketing and economic assessment phase, we would develop more detail, as I mentioned before, and we think at that point we would be in a position to be able to apply, make a competitive application for federal construction grant dollars.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Garland. I understand where you're coming from, and what that would then look like and how it might impact other. Maybe the administration doesn't have an answer to that. Does that make sense, Mr. Garland?
Through the chair, I think I understand the question. And again, the focus will really be on, rail, freight, and air freight, or, through highway, rail, and air freight movement. Whether or not that will look at, economic impact for other sort of tangential economic activity in the county, that's really yet to be determined. But the focus is on, job creation around freight movement in our community, as well as economic development for those industries that rely on freight movement in and out of Monroe County.
I have a few questions for you. Earl, you refer to goods, which is what you would use shipping.
Through to you, Mr. Chairman, the primary focus of the evaluation will really be the land transportation corridors, air movement at the Frederick Douglass Greater Exeter Airport, the different rail lines that service Monroe County, as well as highways, Thruway and 390 primarily. We expect that the study itself will look comprehensively, and look at the marine port, but I don't think that will be an area of focus. The focus really will be around the land transportation corridors. We know in some of our initial discussions that there is a need for transload of bulk materials in and out of the county, centralized paper and food grade storage as well. And that's really a reflection of the nature of the companies that are located here, whether it's Wegmans, Constellation Brands, L3 Harris, GM, Ledestri, Ortho Clinical Diagnostics. Eastman Business Park, could be a key component of this. Obviously, there's a lot of industry there that would rely on this type of transportation. But it would help reduce transportation storage costs for local companies in key sectors. Through you, to you, Mr. Chairman. Again, that will be really the basis for the study itself, evaluating what we believe is a need. And we enlisted Bergman Associates under our term consultant contract, who have an expertise in freight design, railway design, and planning studies. And we were able to review existing studies. Again, some of them are outdated, and times have changed, right? With COVID and international conflicts have really exacerbated what was already a fragile supply chain challenge that we're facing on a global perspective. But there's still elements of those reports that are viable. They were never acted on, but we believe that things have changed, and there is a need for our community to be best positioned to address our local industrial needs. That would, to you, Mr. Chairman, that would really be the work that DES has done, as well as planning and economic development in consultation with the administration, with technical input from Bergman Associates. To you, Mr. Chairman, this would be a substantial infrastructure project, particularly as it relates to potentially the airport, railroad sidings, and other highway type of interface and storage facilities. Again, that's what the study will assess. I'm sure a project of this scale would be in the tens of millions of dollars, but it's critical that we advance this expeditiously so that we can position ourselves, again, if it determines that this is, a viable project, that we position ourselves competitively for federal construction grants. To you, Mr. Chairman, yes, we will. To you, Mr. Chairman, that will certainly be a component of the economic and marketing assessment. That's a real key indicator for projects like this. We've seen other inland ports create tremendous jobs within their communities to support this. I can't speak today on whether or not those would be unionized jobs or not, and what agency would actually operate a facility like this. But we know we're uniquely positioned because we already have existing agencies that have the authority to be able to operate in a function like this. So again, that will be all part of the economic and marketing assessment. And as that is further developed, we'll have more details before any grants submitted.
Everything goes as the administration.
Well, to you, Mr. Chairman, our expectation is that we will have the study, the Marketing and Economic Assessment Studies, complete fourth quarter of 2023. We know we have a narrow window to be able to take advantage of the federal construction grants, as I mentioned before, between fiscal year 2022 and 2026. But beyond that, I'd be speculating in terms of how long and how much a project of this scale would cost and how long it would take to implement. Again, to you, Mr. Chairman, the primary drivers, again, job creation and economic growth and development in the community. To you, Mr. Chairman, this will be presented at the Planning Board this Thursday.
Legislator Johns, you had a question?
Would this initial $1 million or any future money be project eligible under the ARPA funding?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, no, it would not.
Not eligible for ARPA funding. And just to reiterate, through you, Mr. Chairman, administration, just to reiterate, will there be PLAs and other union protections involved in any of this?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, the whole issue of a multimodal facility or multimodal plan is something that has been discussed easily for 20 years or so. And there are various components of that, as Mr. Garland has mentioned. In terms of specific projects or what the recommendations of the study might be, we have a general sense of what some of the needs might be. But also we would be looking to this study to help determine what the operational details of something like that would look like too. So anything like that would be something that would be much further down the road that would be looked at. So at this point, we don't have an answer to that.
Chairman, thank you to the administration.
To you, Mr. Chairman, yes, we can take a look at that.
Are there any other questions? Legislator Mafucci?
Thank you,
Get back
Mr.
to you,
Chairman.
Ms.
Through you. Purpose of this referral is to do a study to meet what is, or what could be, a very important need. We can qualify for grants to pay for it so that we could actually minimize any cost to taxpayers. I kind of have that.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, not quite. Mostly, you're close, legislator. I think the way to describe this is, we're in a position where there are federal dollars that are available out there for projects, and you don't really go from zero to a project. There's sort of a path, and there's sort of a study in your due diligence. This is something that we've identified as a potential need. The goods and services. Right now, there are a lot of goods and services that go past Monroe County before they come back into Monroe County. And what we're looking at is to see if there are changes and efficiencies that we can make to the distribution system that position our region in a better position to help with job creation, and also with all of the issues that we've had recently with the supply chain and not knowing where things are going to go in the future. We also figured that this was an opportune time to take a look at this, to invest these dollars, to come up with what we believe will be a list of recommendations that we will then take and try to secure federal funding if there are recommendations that make sense and are things that we want to pursue from a job development and improving the supply chain.
So just a quick follow-up question through the chair to the administration. What we really want to do here is try to qualify for other people's money to bring back to Monroe County.
Correct. Through you, Mr. Chairman. Correct.
That's where I was going with this. Thank you so much.
Much, Mr. Chairman. Through you to the administration, I guess a follow-up question as I'm listening to the discussion. You say that there have been considerations of this type of development for, a couple of decades. So we must already have some sense of what is desired. And what I'm asking is, when I'm thinking about a land corridor and an air corridor, rail lines, I'm thinking about diesel fuel that's about to get burned. How that is comparing relative to the amount of diesel fuel which have negative economic consequences when you're looking at it from health standpoint. So what I'm trying to understand is if it would make sense to have an environmental assessment occurring at the same time, because I'm guessing that the folks in economic and marketing aren't considering those types of negative externalities in their opportunity for us to move forward with that type of analysis concurrently.
Through Mr. Chairman, we appreciate and understand your concern, certainly. We believe a facility like this will actually improve efficiencies rather than rail and highway and other air traffic that's already going through Monroe County or is bypassing Monroe County. There's ways that this will reduce and make those operations more efficient for local companies. We believe too, through the advent of the Climate Action Plan Phase 2, that other companies will subscribe to the climate goals that we've identified for our community. So those will be taken into consideration as a facility like this is planned, and the ongoing development of EV technology for transportation. So we think this is a great opportunity really to improve efficiency and find a way to move these goods in a more environmentally sustainable manner. As we pursue additional funding, we will have to do a complete state and federal environmental review as well for a project like this.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, hang on 1 second. All set, Legislator Smith? Legislator Hugh Smith, you all set? Legislator Johns?
Chair, to the administration, I kind of have an understanding of what you guys are trying to do and make it more efficient. I like all that. But the one caveat I would have is, we can be promised a lot of money from federal transportation. How do we know that money's going to be there when we do this study and we start the infrastructure work? Is this a project where we're going to have to put the money up front and then get reimbursed by the feds at some point in the future? And where is that money right now? Will it be there in the future? Or will other municipalities have sucked it all up by the time we get our chance to get the handout?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, Legislator, definitely understand your concern with that. The idea with this study is to have a list of projects or an idea of projects that we would want to pursue. And as Mr. Garland had stated earlier, this is a big expenditure on our part. This is a big deal in terms of studies for us, obviously. But also by doing this, it's not going to obligate us to do projects that are tens of millions of dollars that we don't have a way to pay for. And again, I think from a philosophical approach to how we look at things, it's not a bad thing to have a list of projects that are sort of aspirational in terms of what you want to do, where you want the community to go. And if things line up so that the federal dollars are there and you have these projects, that's a great thing. If those federal dollars disappear, there are, our opinion or the thought would be right now, unless things change significantly, there will always be funding sources that we will go after. And, frankly, I think looking out a couple of years, the community will be at a disadvantage if we haven't done our due diligence to actually identify things and say, these are what some of the priorities are and some of the investments we want to make in our community.
Yeah, that's a good point. But through you, Mr. Chair, to the administration, I just want to know, what is a reasonable guarantee? We fund the projects first and then get a reimbursement after the fact? Or are we guaranteed the money up front to go towards the project commingled with the county money to make the project going forward and not have to wait for a check after the project's been complete?
Typically, I'll give my answer, and if I'm wrong, Director Franklin can kick me under the table here. I think typically the way almost all grant programs work is you have to spend the money first. And again, something like this, we wouldn't spend the money first unless we had a commitment from whoever the funding source was. And my understanding is it's a rare situation, or if it happens at all, where there's a commitment of dollars and then those dollars don't come. Right? Is that? Yes, we're comfortable with that.
Thank you.
One.
To you, Mr. Chairman, what we're doing with this referral is seeking authorization, so it would be bonded.
The economic marketing assessment, to you, Mr. Chairman, this referral here, the $1 million worth of the study would be done in the fourth quarter of 2023.
Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed? Carries. Next item, please.
Referral number 22-0227, amend the 2022 to 2027 capital improvement program and the 2022 capital budget to advance the tropical exhibit and main entry plaza project from 2023 to 2022 and retitle the project as Tropical Exhibit and Main Entry Plaza Phase 2. Amend the 2022 capital budget to increase funding for the Tropical Exhibit and Main Entry Plaza Phase 2 project. Authorize financing for the project.
Care to move it? By legislator John, second by legislator Mafucci. Are there any questions? What is the timeline for this project? If this was approved, aquarium, et cetera, be done?
Through the chair, first of all, I'm Sean Murphy, the Chief of Engineering and Facilities Management. So our current schedule is going to the planning board as we talk about the increase in funding July at the end of the week. We're going to finalize construction documents in January of 23 next year. We'll be out to bid in the first quarter of 23. We'll be back to the legislature for approval of contracts in the second quarter of 23. Construction occurring from the third quarter of 23 to the fourth quarter of 25. There's a bit of an acclimation period for the animals before it's open to the public, and we expect that to happen in the first quarter of 26.
Society have $23 million on hand?
Mr. Chairman, the Zoo Society is actively engaged in a capital fundraising campaign of $23 million. They have secured pledges of approximately $7.9 million, of which they have received approximately $6.5 million, plus or minus, as of this date, Mr. Chairman. They have remitted to the county, Mr. Chairman, $3.5 million of their receipts so far. Mr. Chairman, you are correct. The remaining target is $15 million to fundraise. They do not have one donor that they are seeking a pledge from. Rather, they are running their capital campaign across a multitude of their prior and future prospects.
Society ever contributed this much? What's the highest amount?
Mr. Chairman, in my limited tenure here with Monroe County, I'm only aware of 2 other projects in which the Zoo Society has contributed. That would be a Step into Africa, which I believe was $3.5 million. Prior to that, I believe was the Rocky Coast exhibit, and I'm going to have to research that, but it was not $23 million. Mr. Chairman, no, this referral before your honorable body includes bonding authority. The intention would be for the Zoo Society to actively manage their capital fundraising campaign through the duration of the project, soliciting pledges likely through the end of construction and the grand opening, with the collection of receipts shortly thereafter.
Don't contribute the 20. County would be on the hook for that.
Mr. Chairman, we would not have yet bonded for it. That is not the intent. The county in the past, for these types of programs, capital projects, we would be advancing funds to the capital project from the general fund and then reimbursing ourselves as capital fundraising dollars are collected. If the Zoo Society were to fail in fundraising the remaining $15 million, in that situation, Mr. Chairman, then yes, the county would be covering any unraised funds.
There's also thank you. And there's also a mention in the referral of the state having donated, I forget, 42. Have, what kind of a commitment do we have to that 42.5 million?
Mr. Chairman, Governor Hochul has publicly announced that the $42.5 million has been included in her current fiscal year budget. It is part of the state financial plan, although it is not discreetly identified. We do anticipate official contracts for this grant to be forthcoming. As typical, the state of New York will not be sending us an upfront check for $42.5 million. Rather, we will be claiming reimbursement for expenses incurred. Those claiming on state grants generally follow a monthly submission process. For a grant of this magnitude, I anticipate monthly claiming. For smaller grants, we've had quarterly claiming. You're correct, Mr. Chairman. I believe I said that this was publicly announced in several forums by the governor. It is part of the state financial plan, but, Mr. Chairman, it is not its own line item in the appropriations bill. Mr. Chairman, with this referral before you, it results in a need for additional bonding authority of $40.9 million. Monroe County has already bonded $24.3 million, bringing the total county bonded debt expected to be $65.2 million. You are correct. If the Zoo Society fails to fundraise any portion of the remaining $15 million of their capital campaign, that would increase the necessary bonding by the county. If the state were to fail on its commitment of $42.5 million or any portion thereof, that also would increase the net amount of county bonding required.
Bonding it, so it would down the bonds from those sources, right?
Mr. Chairman, we generally don't bond capital projects. Prior to the expenditure of contract expenses. Generally, Mr. Chairman, we will advance to the capital fund the dollars necessary to meet its construction expenses, and then submit claims for grant reimbursement. We would also net out any collections remitted to us by the Zoo Society. Only then would we seek to issue county bonding. Generally speaking, if all goes according to plan, the additional 40.9 million of necessary county bonding would only be portionally issued in 23 and 24 and 25. We would certainly wait until all project costs are known and reimbursement sources secured prior to any final bond issuance. We generally do not want to get into a situation where we're using grant funding to provide the cash for the debt service.
Are there any other funding avenues that would alleviate the
Mr. Chairman, tonight I cannot say whether there are or there are not other funding avenues for this. Tonight, Mr. Chairman, am not aware of potential other funding sources which may or may not exist.
Do we have any idea of what the expected maintenance cost would be of these two new aquarium and the tropical rainforest? And would new staff need to be hired, such as aquatic animal specialists or something like that? Cost might be. Apologize to everybody for my long-windedness, but
Yes, through the, excuse me, through the chair. My name is Steve Lacey. I'm the superintendent of Seneca Park Zoo. We would need to hire additional labor to operate the Tropics Complex. There would, as you mentioned, there's an aquarium element of that. We would need aquarists to dive, clean, feed the animals. We're also looking at groundskeepers, horticulturists. In total, it's approximately 14 full-time bodies and converting 4 part-time bodies to full-time status.
through the those additions, would the cost of a season pass or tickets have to increase to cover those expenses to the?
Through the, excuse me, through the chair, prior studies have looked at increasing the costs. I know that one of our goals is to try to keep costs as low as possible for the citizens of the county and neighboring counties. I don't believe we've identified the need yet, but it's correct. A higher attendance should bring in additional revenue with the attraction.
Have any forecast on what one of the things in the referral, it talks about how tourism dollars are going to be, part of the justification for it. Do we have any forecast on what the tourism dollars will be?
At this time, through the chair, at this time, we don't really have current data on that information.
Tell me how many employees the zoo has right now? Roughly.
Roughly, we have about almost 60. Roughly.
Yeah, roughly. Will master plan be updated?
Yes, it is something that that we need to look at. We're nearing the end of the current master plan, so we will need to update it at some point in time.
Kind of a major change to the master plan. Second, I think I'm done, but. My questions, is it John's?
To the administration. I just want to bring it to your attention that State Comptroller Tom DiNapoli has pointed out on a number of occasions in the last 2 years, the only reason why our state budget is balanced is because of the tens and tens and tens of billions of dollars that we got from the federal government. Number one, we don't have a guarantee that future Congresses will keep sending that money. Back in 2008, 2007, and 2008, they had something in New York State where they cut funding to the schools. They called it the gap elimination. What it meant was they were funding the budget gap with cuts to the schools. Tom DiNapoli, who has been the state comptroller for the last 12 years, is pointing out that we don't really even have a rainy day fund. So a lot of these promises, although I think that everybody in Albany probably has a good intention, there is no guarantee that we're going to get that money. At least the federal government money for the intermodal project, they can print the money.
Legislator Johns, could you use your mic, please?
Sorry. Just to give you an example, New York State owes the federal government almost $9 billion for unemployment insurance for the last 2 years. We have tens of billions of dollars extra. They didn't pay that bill. And now businesses this year will see their cost of unemployment going up. I'm just saying there's some dark clouds ahead. And with all the good intentions that our state legislators and the governor might have, another gap elimination, if they did it to the schools, they certainly could do it to the county and other municipalities. So I just want to make sure that we don't overextend ourselves unless we can use ARPA funding or something else. If we overextend ourselves, there is no guarantee that we will get that money reimbursed after the project is complete.
Expecting an answer to that, legislator?
Isn't that so?
Through you, Mr. Chairman. Again, similar to the question you raised before, legislator, understand your concerns. If something, again, we're comfortable that those dollars are going to arrive. If something changes drastically and they don't arrive, we would have several options. We would be able to scale the project back and make it work within the dollars that we have, or again, seek other sources, or also lengthen the amount of time that we have to complete the project.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, administration.
Comment, Mr. McCann, led to another. Are there exit routes at various points? I'm sorry, I got to grab the mic, yes. Are there exit plans in the build plan here that would enable us to say the state money just fell through, that we exit and here's the 42.5 million that doesn't get done?
To you, Mr. Chairman, in a project of this scale, and obviously with a dependence on state funding, we would, advance the project, develop the scope, with the understanding that funding were available. But once we commit to constructing the project, we would want the highest degree of assurance that that funding was there, whether it's through a contract with New York State or some, grant reimbursement contract. But we, again, would want to have the highest level of confidence before we award those construction contracts. If we felt as we were advancing the project that funding weren't there, we would have to modify the scope during the design development phase of the project.
Thank you, Mr. Garland, and thank you for your patience in answering all my questions. Are there any other questions? I do appreciate the detail you've given me regarding this, but I still think there's a lot that needs to be refer this to the administration until further information and the planning. All of those answers. For example, Mr. Garland, the last question I asked, I have a hard time figuring out how we can, we can launch into this project and then come back to the legislature to construct, and then how do we undo that when the state suddenly says, oh, we owe the federal government tens of billions. And again, thank you for your patience, and I appreciate it. If there are, Mr. Clerk, next item, please.
Referral number 22-0239, classification of action, designation of lead agency, and determination of significance pursuant to the State Environmental Quality Review Act for Monroe Community College Applied Technology Center, STEM Edition.
Second. Moved by Legislator John, seconded by Legislator Blankley. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item, please.
Referral number 22-0240, amend the 2022 to 2027 capital improvement program to advance the Monroe Community Applied Technology Center STEM Edition project from 2023 to 2022, amend the 2022 capital budget to add a project entitled Monroe Community College Applied Technology Center STEM Edition, authorize financing for the project, and authorize contracts with the Dormitory Authority of the State of New York.
Moved by Legislator John, seconded by Legislator Hugh Smith. Is there any discussion? None. I'd just like to comment that I applaud the administration for moving this project forward. I've been hoping this would happen for several years. STEM is something that's critical, I think, to the future of our community. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Yep, there, yes, yes.
Just a point of information. I'm not familiar with the rule you utilized to refer the referral 220. Pardon my.
Are you asking for a rule reference? If you are, I can find
Yes.
it. I don't have it off the top of my head.
Okay.
It's happened numerous times. Basically just says, please come back with some more, detailed answers to these questions, and perhaps some of your legislative staff. And I'd appreciate it, but I will do it if need be.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Does it still require a vote for that motion?
Not at this time.
Back?
It'll come back to the committee. Sure.
Matter is being referred to Ways and Means. Does this impact the Ways and Means Committee?
We're the lead committee on it, so yes.
We haven't voted on it.
Correct, but if it's referred to the administration by the lead committee. Quite frankly, it's the biggest project I've seen, wasn't in the CIP ever, and I said on several things that should cause us all concern on the finances, and
Dollars from other places every year.
Yep.
More than our taxpayers pay. In fact, it's pretty much 2/3 of our.
This is
Yet
not
we
like
approve our
tabling it.
budget every year.
Legislator Mafucci, this is not like tabling it where it might go to die. This is just, let's get some more information, and I didn't.
Hadn't seen
Doesn't
this-
complete until 2025, I think they said. Yeah, you haven't missed many ledge meetings.
No, not ledge meeting.
Committee meetings. It's happened in others. The clerk has just informed me the parliamentarian will be happy to provide you. Okay. There being no other matters to come, the July 25th, 2022 meeting of the Environment and Public Works Committee stands adjourned. The next meeting of the Environment and Public Works Committee is scheduled for Monday, August 22nd, 2022 at 5:15 PM.